Cha-cha. Those extra pans hanging on the hooks. Introducing Master Pan, the all-purpose fry pan that lets you cook 5 different foods all in one pan.
We eat.
I might not want to use this.
Yeah, I think I will. I'll take that part out. So that's good.
Yeah.
You're kind of a cook, aren't you? Are you a cook?
I was prepping for dinner right before I jumped on this call.
Okay. So in the house, all of a sudden, and not all of a sudden because I had to choose to do it, there's a cast iron skillet.
Yes.
Yeah. In my past, I've had access to cast iron skillets, and then things change, and suddenly I didn't have access to a number of the kitchen utensils that I used to have access to, and now I'm slowly rebuilding that, and I've got a cast iron skillet.
Marvelous.
I don't know what to fry first. Although, if a bad guy comes through the door, I know what I'm grabbing.
Isn't there a Tom and Jerry movie out right now?
There is a Tom and Jerry movie out right now. Yeah, it came out on the old HBO Max that everybody, has thoughts on, apparently. Yeah, so here, I'm kind of embarrassed about this because I feel like what I should be doing, like from the time it came in the house, I feel like I should just be making bacon. And I'm not talking about, doing the nasty. I mean, literally making bacon.
There's a dice game where like instead of dice, it's pigs,
yes.
little pigs, and you throw them, and they're one of the cards that like is making bacon, and oh god.
Yeah, I'm still not sure what that's talking about, but so here's what I'm actually going to be doing. I'm making a pan pizza tomorrow night. Well,
Ooh.
A few nights ago now, as people hear this, because that was a thing I did one time, and I'm like, oh, cool, I know how to do that. And now, seriously, 7 years later, when I'm back touching a cast iron skillet, I'm like, yeah, I think I figured out how to do that one time. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I love your response because I said you're kind of a cook, right? And then I said I've got a cast iron skillet now, and you're like, oh, yeah.
We have two cast iron skillets, a Lodge and a I forget what the other brand. Well, it was a kickstarted one, so I forget what the brand is, but it's pretty good. They're both holding up quite well. Okay. And then we also have a a steel skillet. It's not stainless steel, but it's a similar cooking experience, but it doesn't have the density like the mass of the cast iron pan, so it heats up quite a bit more quickly. But it doesn't retain it. Like it's not as good for searing meats because it doesn't retain all that heat.
Gotcha.
I actually this evening I am making. Last night I made from the New York. I've been on a New York Times recipe kick lately. I made the hotel pan or the sheet pan pork chops with Brussels sprouts and sage, which was really good.
Wow. Okay.
Cumin brown sugar rub, very tasty. Tonight is Melissa Clark's Green Goddess chicken, which is basic. It's actually could be the simplest recipe I've ever made because here are 7 ingredients. Put them in a blender. When you're done blending them, put them in a bag with chicken, and then wait, and then put the chicken in the oven. And that's about as straightforward as you can get recipe wise, but it's really good.
Of all those steps, by the way, I think that middle one, I think the waiting is the hardest.
It's the hardest part.
It's the hardest part. Yeah. So it's interesting actually, because I'm like, so I grew up without cast iron in my life, and then I for a while I had a cast iron pan, then I didn't again, and now I do. All right. So I'm getting the whole like now I get it thing. Which funny enough, Mike Rose. I don't think I even said your name this segment. Funny enough, Mike Rose is what we're talking about today. Because, it's one of those things where I have an idea and I'm like, oh, that would be good to talk to 9 different people about. So last week, I was talking to Shelley Brisbane about the fact that I had an aha moment where I didn't get 5G. And then suddenly I felt like I got 5G. And I said to Shelley, do you have one of those? And she's like, yeah, TikTok. And I was like, oh, that's interesting because I had a similar thing with Twitter. Where it's like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know why I'm doing this. Oh, suddenly I get why I'm doing this. And now I spend most days going, I don't know why I'm still doing this. But that's a whole other thing. I'm curious if you have a technology in your life, or if you can think of a technology that you were like, I didn't get it. Suddenly I get why this is.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure, going back a ways, I'm sure I do. TikTok for sure is one of them. I think the one that I really didn't get, this takes me way back, was probably Wi-Fi.
Wow.
I feel dumb even saying it. I just did not really grok at first what the value would be of having, it seemed to me that anywhere I went I had Ethernet, or anywhere I needed to go, and that maybe, I think this was also coming from the time when laptops had built-in modems. It just felt like one of those. It felt to me originally when I first remember thinking about Wi-Fi, it was like, well, this is on the order of, converting all the gas stations, all the gasoline pumps at all the gas stations to be natural gas, which, later on would have been, the same conversation about hydrogen, but this is 30 years ago. And it's like you have a problem here of the infrastructure needing to be ahead of the sort of device demand or the consumer demand, but nobody's going to build the infrastructure unless there is consumer demand. So I think the gap there was for me trying to figure out, like, when is there ever going to be enough of an installed base of Wi-Fi base stations,
right,
for this to even work? Like, how's this going to work? I think had I encountered Glenn Fleischman at the time, he would have slapped me upside my head. But it didn't take long. Like, it wasn't like I was out there, carrying a sandwich board on the street saying the end is nigh, right. Dodge the Wi-Fi. But it took me a little while, and then relatively quickly could have been the clamshell iBook drop. Famously, when Phil Schiller dropped a blue original iBook that was, I believe, the first Apple laptop with Wi-Fi, dropped it 10 feet while it was playing a video over the network at Macworld. That was the demo. Not every demo involves gravity, but that one did. And I was like, oh, I see now. So you can walk around the house. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, it was transient. It wasn't like I spent months and months, as noted, being dismissive about this. But I do remember originally saying, I'm not sure I get this. Like, or I'm not sure this is feasible. It seems like a good idea. Like, it seems like something people would want, but I'm not sure it's feasible because, like, who's going to do it? Who's going to invest the money to have it at home?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's sort of the interesting thing, right? And there are a few different things I think about. I mean, for starters, once your cable company is like, yeah, sure, and the modem we will give you rent you, forever, has Wi-Fi. It's sort of
right.
The moment that I had with 5G was, all I could think about was, when I'm looking at my phone now, everything seems really fast. Why do I need it to be faster? And the aha moment for me was, it's not about you, dopey. It's about
one of the other seven dwarves. I mean, come on.
Oh, nice. There you go. It's about your car being able to talk really quickly to whatever, place and the other cars, or it's about, other devices that, part of that whole pervasive computing thing that we were talking about yesterday. It's about all this other stuff being able to talk. And the problem is you do need those to talk at speeds that are much greater than 4G, which is weird because to the human eye, 4G seems like plenty fast. Are you kidding me? There was an article that I wrote in 2000. It was an article I wrote in 2000 for a magazine that I was working for at the time, where it said you had 8 seconds for hold on to your hat. You have 8 seconds for your page to start loading before you lose people's interest. And at the time, I thought, who wouldn't wait 20 seconds for a web page that they care about? And now, if it was 20 seconds, I would have hit refresh like 4 times because I assumed that something is broken. The idea of waiting 8 seconds for a page to start loading is crazy. So the human eye thing, I mean, it's like, my thought of it was, how fast do I seriously need to get to that next listicle? And it's not about that. It's about, making sure that I'm not going to crash into that other car because they're both talking to whatever respective servers and coming back with directions on how to not hit each other
and how to avoid that collision. Well, it's if your concern about autonomous vehicles and self-driving cars is the trolley problem, or do we swerve to avoid hitting these 5 people and then run over the one person who's in the new path? Mm-hmm. That a fast and the faster, more responsive, more capable that self-driving solution is, and in fact, the more situational, it's a hard word to say, the more situational awareness it has of what is further out on the periphery of its decision zone, of its light cone, the things it needs to worry about, the fewer and fewer of those situations you're going to encounter. You're never going to have a perfect driving AI, but the difference between 4G and 5G could make the difference between, autonomous cars killing quite a few people and autonomous cars killing not so many people, yes, which would be good. And there's plenty. I mean, in the life and property part of wireless communications, there's a lot of ways in which the current infrastructure has not always done us favors. Folks in New York know this pretty well from the September 11th attacks, when the first responders basically couldn't communicate with one another because the transit cops were on a frequency that was different from the rest of the police department, and radios didn't work in the subways, and fire department radios didn't work in the towers. And there's been a lot of infrastructure work there, largely from the former Sprint and the former Nextel, but also from other carriers as well, AT&T among them, to really build better, more robust, more resilient communications infrastructure for emergencies. The thing about 5G is that because it isn't just one technology, it's at least 3, maybe 4, but it's different flavors of the next generation of wireless data, all branded together as 5G. But you have the, essentially faster 4G. You have the pretty darn fast medium range, and then you have the ludicrous speed nanocell version, which basically requires line of sight. And I think it's not quite Wi-Fi range, but it's not more than 400 or 500 feet. But when you put those together, you do start to unlock different kinds of applications, and specifically, as you highlighted in the self-driving car example, different kinds of machine-to-machine applications, that devices that can talk to one another really, really fast and essentially share that situational awareness can enable new kinds of smart digital assistants, as we were talking about yesterday.
You've also got, you've got a similar thing, I think, with what you were talking about with Wi-Fi. I mean, and that's, again, sort of like, you're thinking in terms of a desktop or maybe a heavy laptop and why you're going to walk around with that anyway. Fast forward 10, 15, however many years we're talking about now. Mm-hmm. And, that HomePod that you don't have, you don't have to worry about, okay, where am I going to plug in the HomePod? Not only to power, but then also to, an actual internet connection. Right. And the same thing with my, my smart TV and with my Xbox and with, the 2 or 3 computers that are running around the place. It's one of those things where, okay, I understand you don't understand why you want it, but once you have it, you're not going to understand how you ever didn't.
Right. Yeah. That's I think you've hit on it there. It's not that you immediately understand all the implications or all the consequences or second order consequences of something transformative like this, but once it's prevalent, once it's ubiquitous, it's like, well, how do we ever manage without?